What if the world you know is not the world that once existed? What if, long before cities, before technology, before recorded history, there was a different Earth? A world where time moved differently and human life lasted centuries. Hundreds of years. Not 10, not 50. Hundreds. That world is almost forgotten. But the Bible records it. And in that ancient world, there was a man. Not a king, not a warrior, but someone whose life still confuses people today. His name was Methuselah, the man who lived 969 years. Think about that for a moment. 969 years. That's not just long, that's beyond imagination. Longer than entire civilizations, longer than empires, longer than anything we know today. So the question is, what kind of world allows a man to live that long? Because this wasn't normal for us, but it was normal back then. Methuselah wasn't the only one. Many people in that time lived for centuries. 800 years, 900 years, almost 1,000. So something was different. Something about that world was not like ours. The earth was not the same. The environment was not the same. Even humanity was not the same. The Bible describes a time closer to creation, closer to the beginning, closer to perfection, before the full weight of sin spread across the world. And in that world, life lasted longer, much longer. Methuselah was born into that reality, a world where time felt slower, but life was longer, where generations didn't pass quickly, but stretched across centuries. Imagine knowing your great-great-great-great-grandfather personally. Imagine hearing stories, not from books, but directly from people who lived near the beginning. Methuselah didn't live in isolation. He lived in a connected history, a living memory of the early world. And his family was not ordinary. His father was Enoch, a man the Bible describes in a way no one else is described. It says, he walked with God. Not once, not occasionally, but consistently, daily. A man in close relationship with God, in a world that was slowly becoming darker. And then something happened that had never happened before. Enoch did not die. One moment, he was on earth. The next moment, he was gone, taken by God, alive. No death, no grave, just taken. And Methuselah lived with that reality. His own father never died. Think about the impact of that. Growing up knowing that God is real, not as a belief, but as a fact, because his father was taken by him. That changes everything. That shapes how you see the world, how you see life, how you see God. And yet, even in that kind of environment, humanity began to change. Slowly. At first, almost unnoticed. But it grew. The Bible describes a world becoming more corrupt, more violent, more distant from God. Generation after generation moving further away. Even with long life, people did not grow closer to truth. They moved away from it. Which raises a question. Does more time really change a person? Or does it just reveal who they are? Methuselah lived nearly 1,000 years. He saw generations rise and fall. He saw the world change, slowly but clearly. from something closer to purity to something darker. And as the years passed, another man was born, a child who would become important, not just for his life, but for what would come next. His name was Noah, Methuselah's grandson, the one who would one day build an ark, the one who would face a world completely corrupted. But at this point in the story, that future had not yet arrived. The world was still continuing on its path, growing, expanding, but also falling. Violence increased, corruption spread. People lived longer, but lived worse. And God saw everything. Nothing was hidden, nothing was ignored. And something was coming, something the world had never seen. But before that moment, there was time, years, decades, centuries. And Methuselah was there for all of it, watching, living, experiencing, a witness to a world that no longer exists, a world before the flood, a world before judgment, a world where humanity had time, more time than we could ever imagine, but still chose the wrong path. And that is the part that should make you think, because we often believe, if I had more time, I would do better. If I lived longer, I would change. But they had more time, much more, and they still failed. So maybe the problem is not time. Maybe it's something deeper, something inside. The same thing that existed then still exists now. Because the story of Methuselah is not just about how long he lived. It's about what humanity did with the time it was given, and what it chose instead of God. And as the world continued, moving towards something inevitable, one question remained. How far can humanity fall? As the years passed, the world did not become better. It became worse. Not suddenly, not all at once, but slowly, like a shadow growing longer with every passing day. Violence increased. Not just small conflicts, but deep, constant corruption. People no longer cared about what was right. They no longer cared about God. The world that once reflected something pure was now becoming unrecognizable. And Methuselah was still alive, watching all of it, year after year, decade after decade, century after century. Imagine seeing that kind of change, not hearing about it, not reading about it, but living through it, watching humanity drift further and further away from truth. The Bible describes it in a way that is both simple and terrifying. Every intention of the human heart was only evil, all the time. Not sometimes, not occasionally, constantly. That means something had gone deeply wrong. This was no longer a world struggling with sin. This was a world consumed by it. And yet, life continued. People still lived long lives, still built families, still expanded across the earth. But inside, something was broken. Completely broken. And in the middle of that world, there was one man who was different. His name was Noah, the grandson of Methuselah. While the world moved in one direction, he chose another. While others ignored God, he listened. While others lived for themselves, he lived differently. The Bible says, Noah found favor with God, not because he was perfect, but because he chose a different path. And that made him stand out in a world where almost no one else did. Imagine being one person against an entire world. One voice in the middle of millions. One life moving against the current. That was Noah. And Methuselah was still there, watching, seeing the difference, seeing the contrast, a world in darkness and one man walking in light. And then God spoke. Not to the world, not to the crowds, but to Noah. A warning, clear, direct, final. The world had reached its limit. Corruption had spread too far. Violence had filled the earth. And judgment was coming. Something the world had never seen. Something beyond imagination. A flood. Water covering the earth. Everything wiped away. Everything reset. But before that moment, God gave instructions. Build an ark, a massive structure. Not a boat like we imagine, but something enormous, something that made no sense to the people around him. There had never been a flood like this. No one had seen anything like it. So when Noah began building, people noticed. Of course they did. A man building something massive for something no one believed in. It must have looked ridiculous, strange, unnecessary. People laughed. They ignored him. They continued living as if nothing would happen. And that's the part that matters. Because even with warning, they didn't change. Even with time, they didn't turn back. Even with opportunity, they continued the same way. And Methuselah was still alive. Year after year, watching all of it unfold. Watching Noah build. Watching the world ignore. Watching time run out. And here is something many people don't realize. Methuselah died the same year the flood came. The longest life in human history ended right before judgment. Think about that. 969 years, and it ends at that moment. Not randomly, not without meaning. Right before everything changes. As if his life was connected to that timeline. As if time itself was running out with him. And when he was gone, the final moment came. The ark was finished. The time was over. The warning had ended. And then the rain began. At first, it may have seemed small. Just rain, something normal, something harmless. But it didn't stop. It continued. Stronger, heavier, relentless. Water rising from the ground, water falling from the sky, surrounding everything, covering everything. And the world realized too late. This was real. This was happening. Everything they ignored, everything they rejected, was now in front of them. But there was no time left, no second chance, no escape. Only the ark, and it was already closed. Inside, Noah and his family, safe, protected. Because they listened. Outside, the rest of the world lost. Because they didn't. And the water kept rising, higher and higher, until everything was covered. Mountains, cities, life, gone. A world that lasted centuries ended. Not slowly, not gradually, but completely. And the man who lived the longest was gone just before it happened. Methuselah, a witness to everything, from the early world to its destruction. And now, nothing remained, except the ark, floating on a world of water and silence. For the first time in centuries, everything stopped. No noise, no corruption, no violence.